When did you start your property investment and why?
I used to be very, very successful in advertising. And when my marriage split up in the early 90s, my husband went off and he took money and started again, and I ended up with nothing. So I took my son to the UK and worked at the BBC, and I needed a way in which to build up what I had lost. And that's when I started looking at property. So I bought a small flat at the back of Acton, which is not a very nice area in London. I put my 5% deposit down. It had a lease. It was a leasehold property, so it was cheap. It was £60,000 with a 65-year lease. I cleaned it, invested in a few sticks of furniture just to have the right look, and from there I started to buy and sell until I built up enough to start my own magazine over there and also to buy a home in Hampstead. And that's how I got started. Necessity.
When did you come back to New Zealand and start the property investment business here?
It was in 1999, 2000, I think, around about that time, that when I came back, I started to buy and sell property off the plan. And from that, I started to build up a portfolio, and by selling property that I'd bought off the plan 18 months before, I had a lot of equity. So when I sold them after they were built and was making 100, 200,000, people started to come to me and ask me how I did it and how that they could do it in a way that was not going to put them and their homes at risk. And so I fell into this really because I had found that in the UK, when I had lost everything through my second marriage, it was property that got me started. And I did not want my clients or my friends to lose everything as I had lost it. So I started Propeller. First of all, you've got to see this as an investment. Also, it's not about real estate because it's about investment. So when you say, okay, you're looking for an investment property, understand that the investment property has got to achieve a number of things. And so new investors don't understand that they've got to look and identify the short, medium and long-term strategy for their financial security. What does this property have to provide for them? And then that gives them an idea of the profile of the sort of investment property that they should have. Also their financial setup. How can they protect their home whilst using a little bit of the equity of their home to guarantee the deposit of an investment property? So the way that you can fail is to not understand that this isn't about real estate, to not have a financial plan in place, and also not have the sort of help from those experts that have been doing it for a long time, because this is not something that you can jump into to buy a property that's 500,000 and 600,000 without having help and support by experts.
We have already talked about the property investment, and so any suggestions for first home buyers in Auckland from as an expert in property?
Well, for most people in Auckland particularly, it's going to be very difficult to be a first home buyer because even with the loan to value ratio maybe going down, if the average property price in Auckland is, when we're talking about houses or apartments, it's about 900,000. So even a 10% deposit is 90,000, and that's a lot. My view is to get onto the property market by investing in a property somewhere else that's cheaper, live where you want to live, and let the investment property pay for itself whilst it's building up equity. And when the time is right, then either refinance that or sell that, and that is going to give you a reasonable amount of deposit for your home. Or alternatively, go to your parents and say, can I utilise a little bit of the equity that you've got in your home to guarantee the deposit of my first home?
Because the market, the property market is cooling down now, so do you still believe that next year in 2019 is still a good year for property investment?
Well, you see, I don't believe it's cooling down at all, because if you look at the main centres of New Zealand, Auckland, Christchurch, Hamilton, we are seeing a great deal of people moving into those areas. Auckland, there is a demand for 20,000 dwellings at the moment. At the moment, 20,000. Only 12 to 15,000 are being built over the next 5 years. So there is a huge demand for rental property because a lot of people just will not be able to afford their own home. Plus, with the government, they're not building the thousands and thousands that they've promised. I think they were at 19 instead of where they should have been. Hamilton, we've got the inland port that's being built. Work for 15,000 people who are going to come in with their families. And then when it's built, it's going to be 13,000 people looking for accommodation. Christchurch is on the start of the wave because rentals are higher, because the demand is greater, and there is not enough property in the inner city for people to either buy or to rent. So that's the first thing. So I don't agree with cooling down. Now the other thing is, it's always a good time to buy property, because even if we looked at where property was at its highest 10 years ago. Where is that now? 20 years ago, if you bought at the top of the market, where was that 10 years after? So for long-term growth and long-term success, it's got to be property, but you've got to hold it long-term. The other thing, of course, is that I'm very excited about the fact that not only do we have this shortage of property in New Zealand, but also now, of course, interest rates are the lowest that they've been since the Second World War. So here's what I say to my clients. First of all, if you've got a family home, you refinance it now so that your day-to-day outgoings reduce straight away. And then invest in an investment property, because over the next 10 years, you could have a property that you do not have to put any money into. And if you sold it or refinanced it in 10 years, could pay off the mortgage in your own home. So fantastic times.
So from your previous question, so it's always a good time for you to buy, whether investment or for yourself to live in property, right?
Absolutely. But it's got to be long term. Over the last 4 years in Auckland alone, 4 to 5 years, property has doubled. Even if property slows down, or even if there's a plateau where it may dip, you'll find that since property was first, the buying and selling was first recorded, that property cycles go in 7 to 7.5 years. So you'll have the top of the market and you'll have the bottom of the market. So the longer you hold that property, the less likely you are to be at the mercy of that market.
The book from you is A Fabulous Failure. So what's the most you learn from your bad failures?
First of all, I think that no entrepreneur will ever have an up escalator in their lives. There's always, if you put yourself out there, and if you're entrepreneurial and you're looking at doing things in your life, you will fall on your face at some stage. As long as you learn from that as you move forward. Now, I didn't. 2 or 3 times, especially in my marriages, I didn't learn by that. But if you learn from that, then you're a lot safer in making decisions as you go forward in life, because you've had the experience of how failure works. It's important to realize as well that failing and being bankrupt or losing everything is not the worst thing that can happen. The important thing is that you get up every day and start again with a positive attitude. I'm Nikki Connors, the Queen of New Zealand Property from Propeller Property Investments. Gongzi Fat Hai. Happy New Year.